Welcome to the Alchemy of Business Show with your host, Steve Rodgers. The Alchemy of Business Show is a podcast that mixes practical, actionable business solutions with soulful insights for anyone seeking deeper meaning in their lives and greater success in their work. Steve will be featuring purpose-driven leaders from all walks of life and getting insight into their journeys from failures to triumphs. So tune in to transition, transform, and evolve in every dimension of your business and life. And now your host of the Alchemy of Business Show, Steve Rodgers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alchemy of Business podcast video show. I'm so glad you joined us today, whether you're listening in on your headphones or you might be watching this somewhere on a mobile device or on Roku or wherever you might be checking us out. I'm honored that you're here. I am so excited about our guest today on our show. We have a phenomenal friend and talent and entrepreneur and businessman with me today that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But we are going to be talking about what the show is about today, which is wiser decisions people are making, also finding ways to make more profit and finding higher purpose. So my goal is to bring guests and other thought leaders and people that are doing this in their lives every day. And I can't think of a better person to bring on the show and talk about this, but Mr. Patrick Combs. Patrick really walks his talk in all of this, and he is phenomenal. You're going to learn about him. He is, talk about talented. This is a guy who's one of the only people that can say that he's actually been created, produced, and done a one-man show that he took across the globe, actually. He's also been noted and voted into the Speaker National Hall of Fame. He is a multi-series author and writes with humor, writes with heart, and also writes about really relevant topics. He has sold hundreds of thousands of books. He also is running something called Bliss Champions, one of his latest projects, and he's got a lot of other things that he's going to be talking about today. So Patrick is also a father. He's a phenomenal person, and everyone that meets Patrick loves Patrick. And today you're going to love Patrick when you get done hearing about his story. So let's welcome Mr. Patrick Combs.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much. Let me start by saying congratulations on the audiobook version of Iggy.
Thank you.
On top of the book. I love that you did it. I love the Iggy principles, and I love that you did an audiobook of it. Thanks for having me on the show. This is tremendous.
You're welcome, Patrick. Well, thanks for noting that. And you were one of the people that helped me get Iggy launched. It had been in my mind for years and years, and it had been on draft, and it had been ready to launch. And for anybody that's been out there of getting ready to get ready, I was in that zone for a while. And Patrick and his partner, Eric, who you'll probably hear about here on the show, have something called Bliss Champions. And it was one of the things that got me launched, Patrick. So thank you for getting Iggy launched. And for those of you that don't know what Iggy is, if you haven't heard of it, Iggy is representing inviting good in or inviting God in versus edging good out or edging God out. So I wrote a book called The Iggy Principles, and we got that on Audible, and that's part of what's going to be also being covered in this podcast. But Patrick helped me get some of my words out of my heart and my mind onto paper. And he also helped me carry the message with a phenomenal weekend event that he did to help launch the crack open of the egg to get it out. So Patrick, let's talk about cracking open some eggs, if we would, in your life. So you have a very, very interesting journey. You've been an entrepreneur before entrepreneur was even probably a word in your vocabulary. I mean, I think about some of the stories that you had with your mom and your family and figuring out your path. Can you give us, I read a little bit about your bio, but can you give us a little bit of story? If someone says, who's Patrick, and tell us a little bit about your story, just give us a little Reader's Digest version at the moment. And then I want to dig into some of that as we move forward.
I think I find myself thinking the most relevant thing about my story is the recognition that my single mother, who raised my brother and I on ridiculously little income, $7 an hour, as a licensed practical nurse. My story starts with a great parent, so raising us with very little means, but with a lot of wisdom. I think my mother gave me this phenomenal gift because she would say just two things, basically. Do what you love, boys. I don't care what you do, but do what you love. And the other thing she said, Steve, is she would say, learn to work with your mind. She goes, I work with my back.
Oh, wow.
This is coming from a woman who got a GED education. And so my life started off in Bend, Oregon, in a trailer with no role models for a career, but a very good set of instructions. And I used that simple set of instructions by the grace of God. And I followed my bliss in the first major endeavor of following my bliss was to begin writing a book. That book would go on, to my astonishment, to sell 150,000 copies and help guide that many or more students to figure out what is their passion. And that's the one up in the corner there, major in success, and help them figure out what is.
How old were you when you wrote that book?
26.
So when your mom said, do what you love and work with your mind, how did you go from that advice from your mom to then going, I'm going to become an author? Like, how did that dot get connected?
Well, the connection of dots is a lot of dots. So the closest to the point of writing that book and actually beginning was that I was 25, right? And I opened a newspaper, and I already had swirling in me unknown secret ambitions that I had seen another man living. Another man, I had kind of been a mentee to him, and he was a keynote speaker, and he was crafting his own content. He hadn't published a book, but he was crafting his own content. And I opened this newspaper. I'm living in San Francisco in Potrero Hill. And this newspaper has a national news story about a young guy who wrote a book called Cheating 101, self-published it, and was selling it out of the back of his station wagon going to college. And
Wow.
That was an electrifying, clarifying moment for me, because I felt like, wow, good for him for writing a book, bad for him for selling that kind of advice. I'm going to write a book, 101 excellent things to do during college to advance your passion. And thank God I started that day. I dove in that day and I started writing a book. And I often teach through what you referred to, Bliss Champions. You know, we teach in Bliss Champions that when you align yourself with your purpose and your bliss, magical doors open, providence moves too, mighty forces come to your rescue. And this has been repeatedly evidenced in my life throughout my career.
There's your beginning of your careers there. There you are. How old were you in this picture, do you think?
I'm 21 years old. I'm on the news in San Francisco because I was walking to work and I stopped and delivered a woman's baby on a sidewalk. And it made
I remember that story. Yes. I didn't realize you were that young, though.
Yeah, that's me at that age. It made national.
If you're not seeing this because you're on audio and you can't see it, there's a great picture of Patrick here looking like a really happy camper with his cool glasses on. And he's saying that he was in the newspaper at this time. And that newspaper, Patrick, led to you actually being in a lot of other newspapers in the future after that. Because of other things you did. But let's go back to this baby thing. Right. So when you were on the street and you were saying, oh my God, this woman's in trouble, how did that hit you? And then what made you be the one that jumped in to help?
Well, it hit me like seemingly it would hit every human being. Here's a person that needs help. So I don't think there's an option. You stop to help. But quite a bit of the story was, caught people's attention because 12 other people just stood 10 feet back and watched the whole time. And lots of people passed her by thinking, I'm not going to help a homeless person.
I agree with you on that it's the natural thing to do, to jump in and help. And I don't know if that's part of someone's DNA or their makeup or their raising or their belief, but you were the one that did it. And like you said, there was 10 people that didn't. And unfortunately in life, even today, in this day and age, there are people who pass by every day on the street or in life or in situations, and they don't help. So how did you have that giving heart, and how have you felt you've maximized it decades later?
Well, you have on your wall there behind you, right, wiser decisions. And I believe that the wisest decisions come from the heart. And I in the beginning, and I remember in my 20s, as I was trying to articulate the conversation I was trying to have with 100,000 college students as I toured campus to campus to campus to try and encourage students to truly value their passion as their magnetic north. I was learning what the actual by experiential meaning. What does it mean to, quote, follow your heart? What is the sound of your heart?
Yes.
At 55 years old, I'm really happy to say that I accomplished in my life learning the difference between the ego, which your book articulates so fantastically well.
Thank you.
Right? Are you edging God out? The ego edges God out, or are you listening? Are you inviting God in? Now, for me, it's in the language, in the heart. I can tell the difference between how my ego thinks. So my ego thinks shallow, it thinks judgmentally, it thinks fearfully, some of the major traits. but my heart thinks connectively, it thinks lovingly, it thinks caringly, it thinks compassionately. So I think on every given day, we are offered continually in this system a choice on which advisor do we want. And so one of the greatest decisions I've ever made in my life is getting clear. I don't want the egoic advisor. It knows nothing about how to create true peace, real love, and great joy.
Wow, that's powerful. And Aaron's on here. If anyone is seeing or hearing another person on in a minute, Aaron is my engineer who's helping me run this show. Aaron, I think we only have about 2 minutes left in this segment, but can you pop up those books again that we had for those that are visually seeing this? So Patrick's message of what he just said about coming from the heart and helping others and following voice you're going to listen to has been reflected in numerous books. And for those that you're seeing here, we're going to come back and talk about some of these. The Purpose Code, Cash Me If You Can, Bursting, which was his last one. So please stay tuned. I want you to come back, and what you're going to find out from Mr. Patrick Combs is not only does he know how to express heart and help people find their passion, but he's also understood how to help people find out how to monetize it. Because one of the things that is challenging as entrepreneurs or when people are trying to follow their bliss is how do you actually monetize this passion that we have or that entrepreneurs have? So stay tuned, and you're going to hear about bursting and bursting with passion and hopefully more abundance. So everybody sign back in. We'll be back in just a few moments. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Alchemy of Business Show. We are here with Mr. Patrick Combs, who is a serial entrepreneur, serial author, and a person who helps dreams come true. And what do I mean by that? Well, he actually runs an organization with his partner, Eric, called Bliss Champions. So, Patrick, I'd love to dig into this segment. We were talking about in the first segment about dressing up, showing up, and really finding your passion and following your heart. And as your mom said, work with your mind and not always your hands. You've also actually done both. But I want to talk about in this segment, you've continued to do that. And, you never really took the corporate America path, but you've run businesses and you've been successful. So I'd love to talk in this segment as we drill into some of the questions or topics that you'd like to bring up. How did you personally marry this dream of passion and shows and books into making it monetarily beneficial that you could keep doing it? And now in this day and age, how are you helping others do that? So let's talk about that alchemy of connecting those things together, please.
Yeah. So one of the greatest distinctions that we help people make in Bliss Champions is that your bliss, your joy, and the reason why we use the word bliss, which really is a substitute for joy or great aliveness, is because Joseph Campbell gave us that fantastic set of instructions in the 1970s from his scholarly work, gathering all the stories across the globe, across all cultures, the stories that share how human beings share the meaning of life and the map of life. So follow your bliss is an extraordinary kernel of wisdom that's been cultivated by all cultures. And so you could say, oh, that means follow your joy. So in Bliss Champions, what we have to teach people is it is a false belief, extraordinarily limiting belief to think that some blisses can be monetized and some cannot. So what we have to remind and instruct people is any bliss, anything can be monetized. If you think you can't monetize it, then you need to increase your skill for monetization. They're different skills. Mm-hmm. Show me someone who's bad at monetization, and I'll show you someone who struggles to see the money in their bliss. Show me someone who's great at monetization, and I'll show you someone who can monetize anything, including their greatest joy. So my greatest example, Steve, the one I learned the most from is when I decided to follow my blissful calling into theater. And the most excruciatingly difficult kind of theater there is, the one that, quote, theaters don't want, is a one-person show.
That's right. God, talk about courage.
So everybody said, you can't make money in theater. We have, people have been giving instructions across, humanity's time on the planet forever, instructions to say things like, be bold and mighty forces will come to your rescue. When there's finally commitment, then providence moves too. What this is sages and those who have come before us and succeeded greatly before us saying the wild thing is, and I don't want people to trust me on this, I want them to experience it for themselves and become testifiers as I am, that when you align with your purpose, when you align with your greatest joy, you have now stepped into some kind of universe.
That's right. The
that
universal
will
energy.
help you by
That's right.
opening doors for you and help you
Absolutely.
monetize your greatest endeavor. The universe desires for you to succeed at your purpose.
Absolutely.
So
Well,
why
and you and I have in that. Can we stop just 1 second on that? I want to go back to and show that for those who are, because my engineer popped up your slide there. Aaron, can you pop that back up? Because in the purpose, Patrick, in what you were just saying, when you were sitting on the street, for those of you who can't see it, Patrick's sitting on a sidewalk in front of a bunch of pictures behind him and posters. And one of them is man zero or man one, bank zero, which is what he's talking about. So this is you materializing a dream right here. This picture, I wish people could see it if you're on your podcast, but you can't. But tell me how this picture encapsulated what you just said a minute ago.
Okay. So that's 2012.
Okay.
I got a red carpet, a red carpet VIP celebrity appearance at the greatest, one of the greatest theater festivals in the world. I rode in on a red carpet as kind of a hot show, right? And so if I look at that picture through the lens of monetizing your bliss in 2012, I'll tell you about that guy in that photo. That guy in that photo is making $10,000 to $15,000 per keynote speech, and he's in super high demand during the day by corporations around the world like Google. That guy in the evenings is doing a comedy show that's selling theaters out, 500 seat venues out, 1,000 seat venues at $60 a ticket, making hundreds of thousands of dollars from a theater show, from a comedic theater show, and at the same time selling books in bookstores. So,
which people told you couldn't be done, which people early on said you couldn't monetize that you dubbed. So how did you not listen to them? How did you ignore them saying this can't be done? How do people, because that voice is in everyone's head, sometimes themselves, and they're hearing it from the world. So how did you find the tools and skills like you were talking about earlier? How did you, Patrick Combs, not succumb to that?
I've learned a kind of a little way to say it to people, because it's what you really need to embrace. The only way you can fail is if you fail to convince yourself. And somehow I succeeded to convince myself against the naysayers on the outside and the self-doubts on the inside, of which I was full of. I was full of self-doubts, and I had naysayers on the outside. But yet somehow it is possible for all of us to convince ourselves it is possible. So I fought the good fight, and I kept convincing myself it is possible. But Steve, I went on one basic principle. I have always believed that mastery can be achieved through a dedicated effort. I have always believed if you can't shoot a basket, if you can't shoot a hoop, if you keep trying and you get instructions and you keep trying, you will eventually be able to dunk it. And that's just
so
true.
That is true. Well, and what he's saying there, again, it's worth underscoring. Mastery can, say it one more time, mastery
can always be achieved. It can through a dedicated effort.
Through a dedicated effort, which is taking and learning your craft or your skill. So I know that you've helped your daughter in her previous quest of doing shows, and you have to rehearse over and over and over again. I know you're also a musician, and you rehearse over and over and over again. I know when you were in the Bliss Champion stuff, you were having the participants at the end of the event practice over and over again their story, what they were going to pitch to the group. So this skill that you have, and that all of us need to learn even more of mastering it, the people that make things look effortless, whether it's a beautiful person singing or an actor, it's because they've done it time and time and time again, and they have this art. So what I want to come back on the next segment is dig a little bit further in that and really talk about some of these skills. We were talking about in the first segments about monetizing things. And in this segment, we're really talking here about mastery and overcoming self-doubt. So I'd love to get back in this next segment as we come back a little bit more into those topics. And then I want to jump into some fun little section on some Instagram things. But what I want to talk about, Patrick, for the group and for those that would like to come back and join us, I hope you will. We're going to talk about some of the tools of mastery, mindset, and again, monetizing your bliss. because that's something we all could do more of. So come back and join us with Mr. Patrick Combs. We'll be back in just a moment. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Alchemy of Business. We are here talking with Mr. Patrick Combs, and one of the things we always dig to in this show is making wiser decisions and finding also ways to make more profit and become more abundant in your life, but also finding higher purpose and higher meaning in what you do. And talk about a master of doing that. Patrick's been sharing his golden nuggets here through the first two segments, but we want to dig further into what we were talking about before. He was talking about how has he overcome the naysayers in his mind or others outside in the world that were saying you couldn't monetize a show, you couldn't monetize a one-man show, you couldn't monetize theater, selling books, how are you going to make money of that? And he gave us various examples as to how he's done that and at a very high level. So Patrick, could we jump into, you were talking about mastery earlier, and we were also talking before that about monetization. So in this day and age where many people, including myself at times, want instant gratification, we want things now. So how do you advise people that are on a bliss path or want to be on a bliss path to monetize their bliss, to have the discipline and the mindset first? And what are some of the things that you might do as far as rituals or skills or things that you've done to affect some of these things that you do well? Mindset, following your passion, and then monetizing it. So I know that's a lot of unpack.
No, super fast, Steve. I love it. Thank you for such an elegant, profound setup. Okay. I think it strikes me right now, there are three things. Number one, you must get in alignment with your joy. If someone's not going to truly actually align with what they have massive enthusiasm for, they're not in my game. They're not in the game to me, because they've already sold themselves short and they will not summon the energy from the universe that will take them to great heights. Joy and purpose summon tremendous energy through you. It's actually how you bring energy to you. So number one, align. Then number two, it's so simple seemingly to me. I have never done anything or encouraged anybody to do anything that hasn't already been monetized in the world by somebody at a very high level.
Okay.
So for instance, when I go into speaking, how am I going to make money? Well, I don't know. How is Tom Peters making $65,000 a talk? How is Les Brown doing it? So proof of concept is always available if you look. But when you look at the proof of concept, what you will see creates self-doubt, which is, but they're so incredible. And that's where mastery comes in. And to me, I want people to remember, and you can be too. So just the fact that I started as a very horrible speaker, and I started as a very unfunny comedian, and I started as a very bad writer does not eliminate me from becoming a great speaker, becoming funny, and writing a successful book.
Oh, I love
How
that.
do you get there?
Can you underscore that just like 30 seconds? But it doesn't eliminate me. Did everyone hear that? Just because I'm not good at X does not eliminate me from Y. And he just glossed over that for a second there, because he does it's in his sleep. But for all of us that have thought, God, I couldn't be X because I'm not there yet, and we don't have the self-confidence to do it. And what Patrick is saying is that does not eliminate you from reaching heights that you have in your mind you want to aspire to. So thank you for bringing that up. So let's go back on that path, Patrick. But I just think that, so many people don't get started because that fear holds them back so much that they do eliminate themselves.
So yes, Steve. And the primary obstacle that I experienced between me and getting started in maintaining is failure. Is failure. So, I hope for my children to learn to have a wonderful relationship with failure, because failure is such a great teacher. All I had to do to become, to get to the stages I wanted to be at and to perform at the level that I wanted to be at is be bad at first. That's all I had to do. Now, I had to be bad for a year in theater. But after
that's a long time to be bad. And you got really good.
Steve, then I enjoyed 15 years of touring, 400 shows, 80,000 audience members. So I like to tell people, there are about 100 people who saw my show in the first year and they think I'm horrible. But there are 80,000 more that think I'm one of the greatest theater shows they've ever seen.
And do you think you got that much better between one, like, let's say the person saw your 50th show versus your 65th show. Do you, from how you were presenting, believe you got that much better? Or do you believe that the magnitude of those seeing it and someone saying they liked it to the next person, or was it a combination of both those things that changed that trajectory?
I went from horrendous to excellent.
That's great. Did you hear that when he just said, you guys?
You know
he
what?
just said that. He acknowledged both of those things. You acknowledged both. I love that.
I went from horrific. My friends, after seeing me perform for 11 months, begged me to stop humiliating myself and told me I wasn't
right to the
funny.
heart.
They told me I wasn't funny because they cared about me, and all they could see was that I would permanently be unfunny. But I fortunately, for some reason, I've never seen the logic in permanently something. If you put effort and diligence and study into anything with a massive dose of willingness to fail and learn from it, you can do anything. You can get good at anything.
Wow, I love that. Well, he's going from horrendous to excellent, and he owned both of those things. And if you could see his face, for those of you that could see, you could see that he got that. He got that he was horrendous, but it didn't stop him. But he also knew when he got to excellent, and he wears that badge proudly because he earned it. So I love that you own both of those places, and you were both those humans. You were both those things, and those things can coexist. And that's kind of the polarity, right, of the yin and yang, and the quest and the growth that I think higher power and God has intended for us, to have that horrendous or that pain to then pull you to the other side of what's possible on the other side of that, which is art, which is love, which is, beauty, which is magnitude of all the things that makes your heart sing and then want to keep doing it. But you had to have some taste of, you hope that was what it tasted like on the other side to take all those arrows to the heart. I would imagine that holding on to what possibly could be that you hoped it was good enough allowed you to have your friends who loved you to say, Patrick, you suck, to keep going. So, how did you connect those dots?
There's two things. I have always first seen a person in the world who is living my bliss. And that is a powerful imprint. So when I saw Spalding Gray and John Leguizamo crushing it on doing a one-person show, it was so exhilarating to my soul that was the primary glue I would use. Because, it's that old phrase where someone comes up to this piano player who just lit up that place in New York, the best place in New York, Carnegie Hall.
Yes.
And they go, I would give half my life to play like that. And he said, perfect, because that's how long it took me. So I encourage people, what would you give half your life to be able to do? Great, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. You'll start to experience joyful results. They won't take half your life to start to experience joyful results, but it may take a while to figure out, how do you get your hands to move on a keyboard?
Yeah.
Right. But the second thing, and it's so big, and I used to say this to audiences all the time. I used to say, look, this notion that you have to believe in yourself is a half truth, because I barely believed in myself when I started speaking. But mostly I didn't believe in myself. Mostly I was full of doubt. But there is something inside you when you are aligning with your purpose and you are aligning with your bliss. And I know the sound of it. There's something inside you that does whisper, but you can do this eventually. But this is for you. And that's the only voice to pay attention to. So, wow. Steve,
that's powerful.
I failed. And the weirdest thing about after every failure, and they hurt like hell, I would go home and I was crushed. And yet I would wake up the next day and something inside that would whisper, you can do this. There was no evidence, but there's a whisper that says, but you can do this.
Yeah, you had that tapping on. And to me, I determine that as higher power, energy, or God. Not everyone determines it that, but that, to me, when you're following your bliss or your passion and it gets tapped on your shoulder, and it's a little aha moment. To me, that's God's way of saying hello. That's like a little moment that it sparks through and God says, hello, and you got it just long enough to keep you going. And other people might term that other things. And the next time I want to check to you about how you determine that. But Paulo Coelho wrote about that. And I know I don't know if you turned me onto this book or someone else did, but The Alchemist, Paulo Coelho, who writes so eloquently, and he's an awesome storyteller like you are, Patrick. But in The Alchemist, which is partially one of the things that motivated me on factors to name my company Alchemy Advisors. But in that book, he talks about exactly what you're saying, that when you find and identify what you want and your mind is made up, the universe just conspires towards your success, even in the lieu of pain and wind in your face. So, that's something you and I have in massive common. And I want to end this segment real quick on following some of this blissful things. And we have a segment that we do that we just added in. Actually, you're one of the second people to do this. But it's called, in the vein of my Iggy principles, which is IGI. We have this called, I don't know if you can see your screen if you're looking on a video device, but if you can't, it's called the 3 I's: instantly, interesting, Instagram. And what this is. So we got the 3 I's, and the rules are: we took a quick look at your photos on Instagram the last few weeks, and we then pulled up some interesting photos without any context, that we didn't look at all of the copy on it. We just looked at the photo. And then we want you to quickly tell us a quick snapshot as we share this photo, what was happening in this photo at the time. So we're going to pop into this one. So I think you can see it, Patrick. It looks like a bunch of people here that just had some kind of a massive experience. So what's this photo here with you guys that looks like a very awesome place?
That is the graduating class of the 16th retreat we've run in Bliss Champions. We are in Hawaii celebrating that these people have aligned with their bliss and know how to monetize it.
Wow. And for those of you who can't see this is a bunch of happy campers. And obviously monetizing bliss is how we all should look every day with those faces. Okay, let's pop at this one. This is a solo photo, for those that can't see it, of Patrick actually with a guitar strapped around his shoulder, looking a little bit either like John Mellencamp or maybe across a cougar there. So tell us about what's in this photo.
Well, that's really funny you say that. That is me with my private personal pleasure, which I don't take public. I play and sing to myself or maybe my girlfriend, a one-person audience in my home by myself. But it's so wild because I will often do Mellencamp songs, either Mellencamp or Mellencamp or Tom Petty.
Both great artists. Okay, what about this one? We have a full-grown Mr. Patrick with his little bit of a gray goatee and a full-blown Batman outfit. Tell us about this.
That is my secret identity. At nighttime, I roam the streets, and I am a superhero. That is that's Halloween, and I had one of the single greatest Halloweens I've ever had with my girlfriend Polly, who was an incredible Batgirl.
Oh, I bet.
Excuse me, cool. Catwoman.
Oh, okay, Catwoman. Oh, I had to see. I don't.
We had a great time in that. That costume crushed it. Everybody in my age range ran up and said, "Yes, Batman, the real Batman."
Oh, that's so fun. I love that. Well, let's end on this one photo here. It is looking like a little potentially partial mini Patrick, and then a even younger mini Patrick with a cat there, I think. So tell us what's happening in these photos.
Oh, I'm not seeing that photo. I'm not seeing the one you're describing. I'm seeing the one at me at the Edinburgh.
Oh, can you pop the next one up there, Aaron?
All right. That's my son, Will. So at 13, him recently, and then him as a little kid. And that's a really great day in my life where their mother was away. So I went to the postal center and I got bags and bags and bags of those little styrofoam peanuts, and I filled our front room to be about 1 foot deep with those things so the kids could play in it.
Oh my gosh. For those that aren't seeing this, if you're on podcast, you see like literally all those little styrofoam little peanut things with a cat and a little boy looking like, wow, what's his going? Like somebody did something really cool for him. Well, cool.
Dads have a responsibility to do the insane.
That's right. Well, and I know you have a daughter that you're very proud of. Let's talk about her at the beginning of the next segment. And then I want to come back and talk about your definition of spirituality and Iggy. And I know part of that flows through your kids, and I know you're a happy, proud papa. So everyone, that please come back. We've got one last segment we're going to go into, and we will dig a little bit further into these monetizing your bliss. And we're going to talk about how do you take your own definition of spirituality and incorporate that into your passion so that you're really resonating at a high level. So thank you. Come back and join us. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Alchemy of Business, where we are helping people find ways to make more money and find higher purpose in what they're doing, and also to make wiser decisions. And again, I'm doing that with Mr. Patrick Holmes today. We were talking about many cool things before we signed off, but we were talking about how he had helped his son with these cool little dreams that he always creates from. I know they backpack and they hike together, but he was talking about some of the fun things he did with his son. But Patrick, I wanted to mention when I think met your daughter was one of the first time, it was at a play that she was doing. I mean, how, and I think your example of being your own follow your bliss guy, didn't that lead on to your daughter following in some footsteps in that way? Can we talk briefly about that before we jump onto some other topips?
Yeah, you were so kind, and you came to see my daughter's one woman show. So so I succeeded with a global smash hit one person show, and then my daughter wants to go into acting. She wants to go into film acting, but for her graduation I constructed this gift. I said, hey, I rented a theater, and I found a really great play script for you that was written by a 20-year-old about a young woman boxer, and as long as you're willing to get ready, we will work for the next 3 months, hours every day, and I'll teach you two things. One, how to crush it in a 1 hour, one woman show, how to knock the audience out of their seat and get a standing ovation. And number two, how to make $1,000, $2,000 doing it. And so I mentored her in those two spaces, and those two realities came true. Now, I don't want it to sound like, I'm the hero of the story, because that 19-year-old went to work and she memorized a 1 hour script and brought the characters to life and crushed it at her bliss. Yeah. And she pushed herself through all the limiting beliefs that say, how am I going to make $2,000? How am I going to sell tickets for actually $25 when I've never done this before? When all the expenses were paid, because she had to pay them all, she had $2,000 for doing what she loved.
Well, I love that. When she killed it, I mean, you could tell every ounce of her heart and soul was into that show. And how different was that from you not being, you were behind the scenes as a proud papa, but you were also a producer and helped on music and helped that. So how was that a different experience, observing someone else's dream similar to what you had materialize, because you're doing that in bliss? But how was that to do that with your daughter?
Well, I guess it was one of the greatest experiences of my entire life. It was one of the unseen treasures that came from following my own bliss. And that's what your bliss does, is it has so many treasures in store for you that you cannot imagine what treasures are coming your way when you commit to your bliss. So one thing I could never imagine is that someday I would be taking everything I learned the hard way over 15 years and easily transferring it to my daughter. So yeah, I was awesome. Just on fire with gratitude and grace and love that night.
Well, one of the things that we can do is to pass that on to our children as our biggest legacy. So that's so awesome. I'm sure she has similar experiences of what a great thing that was for her. And so I want to talk about that, on how you're doing that for others in your own business model, where you literally, are writing about heart, writing about passion. And you had numerous books that you've written. So let's see here. Yeah, Aaron, thank you for popping that back up. And for those that can't see it, Patrick has various books that he's written here, and it's probably, I was going to ask you, but you don't have really time to go into how each of these kids, so to speak, which are your books, are different than the next. And it's hard to say who's your favorite kid. I know how that goes. But in this, your most recent book is called Purpose Code. Can you talk briefly about that? And I want to then talk from that and how to have that dovetail into an Iggy conversation about your own spiritual beliefs and practice in your own life. So let's talk about Purpose Code real quick.
Purpose Code is the book that we wrote after running Bliss Champions for 4 years and having 100 graduates. So it is our instruction manual for how to figure out what your purpose is, how to figure out where your bliss is calling you, how to figure out how to go about it, and how to monetize it.
It's an awesome book.
Really excited about that book. Yeah.
Good. Well, I think everyone should grab that. Can they get that on Amazon and any of the major places? Sure. I'm assuming.
Sure. Yeah. I want to make a comment about the other two books really quick. It's really easy.
Yeah. Let's pop those back up, Aaron, for those that are visually seeing this. Yeah.
Number one, Major in Success, up there in the top corner, is if you have a college student or high school student in your life, that book will guide them to figure out their passion and know how to maximize their college years to be able to live their dream that way. Cash Me If You Can is the book about my one-person show. It tells the story of my one-person comedic show, and it's being made into a Hollywood movie.
I knew that was on your project list. You and I want to, we won't have to come back and do a whole segment on that, Patrick. That's got, so talk about manifesting. When people were saying you'll never do anything with a one-man show, and now you've materialized it into a movie. It's unbelievable. So I want to come back and have a whole show on that when the time is right about that one. And then Bursting.
That was a dream come true for me. My earliest writing aspirations was to tell stories from my life, inspiring, heartwarming, or funny stories from my life. So that is 50 of the best stories from my life.
Well, you're a master storyteller. So those of you that can't see this image here, we'll have these in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcast you might be doing, if you don't get the benefit of visual, but Patrick, you can also just Google Patrick Combs on and go to Amazon and check out these books. But he's a master writer. So Patrick, one of the things that when I saw you speak for the first time, it was actually with I want to come back before I forget to your partner Eric, who you co-wrote that book with, and you run the Bliss Champion with. So Eric, in his own right, I'm going to have on the show as well, and hope to have really conversations with him very soon. But you guys have formed a really great partnership, and you want to say something about Eric before we jump into some last segments here?
Yeah, Eric co-runs Bliss Champions with me. We co-founded it together. Eric's the single most successful entrepreneur I've ever met and known. He is also my best friend. But Eric, achieved great wealth and tremendous entrepreneurial success, building very large organizations, and then he reached the end of that model. The model that there's something broken about the entrepreneurial model. And he reached the end of it where he was disconnected from people, feeling a little lonely at the top and a little misaligned with his purpose after a while, too much focus on just wealth. And he knew he wasn't giving his greatest gift. And then he almost died on the first week in his mansion with all the exotic cars in the front. And that woke him up to getting realigned with his purpose. And the first phone call he made was to me, and he said, "I want to start a company." And that company became Bliss Champions. And
you guys are doing some amazing work, and his wife as well. I mean, they're between real estate and Bliss and smart entrepreneurial things you guys are investing in together. So we're going to come back and do a whole segment specifically with Eric, but he's definitely worth noting. And his last name is Lochtefeld, right? Is that how you? Is that? I always seem to mess up his last name, but Eric is amazing. Well, let's jump into what you and Eric are doing, but specifically you on the path of weaving all this together. You've talked about heart, and you've talked about following your bliss, and you've talked about passion, and you've talked about overcoming those negative voices. How do you define your own spiritual, practice or belief? In the summary of Iggy, I determine that as, for me, inviting God in versus edging God out. And for everybody, their G in the middle. If you're seeing on a screen here, this is kind of the principles that I use within Iggy principle, whether it's prayer and surrender and service and forgiveness, and then also the 4 B's of body, being, bonds, and business balance. But for you, Patrick, what's your G? Like in your definition of, God, grace, good, whatever it might be, how do you define your own Iggy? And how do you have that incorporated into, it's very obvious to me how you're doing it with all you just talked about, but how do you consciously connect with your spiritual source or relationship that you have?
This is why I love your book so much. So for me, it's not so much what Iggy means. It's the for me, my spirituality, I found it in 2013 when I was at rock bottom and had a total surrender. So to me, it's more about what happens when you remove the ego. When you distance yourself from the ego, what's left is my spirituality. And I think this is why the Buddha didn't define what happens after the end of suffering. He just said, these principles are to end suffering. So I set out to end my suffering by distancing myself from my ego. And what that showed me is what I'm like when the ego is gone. And what I experience myself as when the ego is gone is connected to God, continually peaceful, joyful for no reason, and loving from the inside out. And shockingly, easily access my highest, grandest, greatest thoughts. So I've never had a more effortless connection to my talents and gifts.
Wow, that's
So
a drop the mic one right there. That is like, that's a drop the mic, what you just said there. That is so powerful. I'm glad that I am recording this call and this show. And I'm gonna highlight some of those right in the show notes, Patrick, with your blessing, because that summed it up so beautifully. And I hate that we're out of time, but we are out of time. But what a great way to end the show with Patrick just dropping that mic on what his belief is of spirituality and shedding the ego, and then what's left, and for him what's left, and that is God. And for some people that might be nature, some people that might be family, whatever it is that is being shed, but each person can find that. But I love that Patrick just so eloquently described that, which doesn't surprise me, being a writer and a speaker and a musician and an artist, so and a spiritualist. So you tied that beautifully together. Patrick, you couldn't have been a more joyful and wonderful guest. And I always love talking to you in person over coffee or at a Bliss Champion event, or specifically here on the show. You've been great. And for everybody that would like to meet Patrick in person, virtually, at an event, or read one of his books, we're going to have Aaron pop up how to reach Patrick here. But Patrick, for those that can see here, they'll see your stuff. But what's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, I would say connect with me through Instagram or Facebook and DM me.
Okay. And and there, for those that can see the screen, it's the Blisspreneur on Instagram. We'll put this in the show notes. And then his website is patrickcombs.com, and Combs has a B in it, so it's COMBS. And then they also have the Bliss Champions website, so you can Google Bliss Champions. And you can also reach out to him by DMing him, so to speak. But thank you again, Patrick. Really enjoyed the show. Anything else you want to say to the group before we sign off?
Yeah, I want to say if someone's really gripped by this conversation, I would say make your first stop blisschampions.com, because this is a Bliss Champions conversation.
Absolutely. Well,
thank you,
everybody.
Steve. I want to say that it was just extraordinary to be on with you. I just love you so much, and your new show is fantastic, and your book is incredible.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, everybody, for listening in on the Alchemy of Business. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us, and continue to follow your bliss and find your Iggy, and life will continue to be joyous for you at a very deep level. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.